we have to figure out a way to allow our students and teachers to be creators of content, not just consumers, but do it
Mhm.
in a way where they're protected and our environment is protected. Because as you just said, you can find a vulnerable, weak link, and it's going to give you access to so much more.
Welcome to the CNL podcast, where we dive deep into the minds of IT and security professionals to uncover their experiences, challenges, and best practices in today's ever-evolving tech landscape. I'm your host, Cedric Lusant, also known as Show Up, Show Out. I'm thrilled to welcome Peter DiDonato, Chief Innovation Officer at SCH Academy. Thanks for joining us today, Peter. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing great, and I appreciate you having me on the show. Lots to learn from you. So looking forward to today.
Awesome, awesome. Well, actually, we'll be learning from you today, Peter. So all good, all good. So could you start off and tell us a little bit about your background and how you got started in the world of IT?
Sure. It's kind of a long, circuitous story, so I'll make it as short as I can, and hopefully it will resonate with some others out there who've been in the field for a little while, like you and myself. I was in graduate school as
Mhm.
a French tutor for undergrad students, and I was put into back then what were called language labs, and I was, helping people learn French, and
Mhm.
that became taking care of the computers that were in there, which honestly I knew nothing about. And
But they had you.
before, yeah, they were like, here you go. They dropped you in there and they were like, this is all yours. And I thought, oh, I'm in trouble, kind of deal. But I started learning a little bit. I started learning how to connect machines together, how to get them online. And pretty soon, the other graduate programs were coming over and saying, like, hey, we're having a problem with our Macs. Can you come by our lab? Or, we have an issue in the undergrad area. Would you mind taking a look? And I started meeting people, and I ended up getting a job at an independent school, which is where I am now. It's almost 30 years later. And
That's awesome.
independent schools were something very different for me. I'm a Philadelphia city kid, went to public schools, had great experiences there. But
Mhm.
independent schools are very different. They have amazing access and opportunity to people and resources for students that I find myself very lucky to be here to help provide these opportunities for students.
Mhm.
And independent schools often tend to be on the forefront of using technology in education. So, pretty early on, they were looking to do things like computer labs and websites. And this is like mid 90s. It was very, very new at the time.
Mhm.
And I just have kind of, progressed through there. I actually left for a year and went and worked IT at higher ed and came back when they opened up a
Mhm.
position called director of technology. I came back to the school and really helped create strategy, create opportunity for people to learn about technology and integrate it into their practice, into teaching and learning, especially as we were starting to see kids be a little bit more comfortable with tech than adults were. And as the years progressed, we, in many ways, became a leader in teaching and learning with technology. At one point in the early 2000s, we were the largest single site installation
Mhm.
of smart boards in North America. We had an engineering and robotics program that started just a few years after that. And
Awesome.
pretty shortly after, we entered the world of one to one programs for our students. So every student in our school has a device from pre-K through 12 that they use as part of their learning. And obviously it varies how much they're used and where they're used based on their age and what they're studying and
I
whatnot.
used to have to go to the library to use the computer.
Yeah, the library use computers, right?
Yeah.
It's really interesting. And I do think COVID taught us a lot and made us really rethink screen time and
Yep.
intentional, smart screen time for young people. And we have to make sure we're doing a good job making sure they can be focused, have intellectual conversations, think creatively, and use the technology to enhance that rather than
Yep.
replace it. Uh,
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a challenge for sure.
Yeah, because we learned a lot. Like you said, we did learn. The whole world learned a lot during the COVID times because a lot of businesses had to shift the way that they offer their services in order to keep the doors open. Just like, with you guys, you had to make sure that you're still able to educate your students. So having those devices are one of the key things. But I think there was some good pros and some cons. I don't think we'll dive too much into those times, but I feel
Yeah.
like socially, and I think there are some studies that came out, but socially, it stunted the growth of some of the majority of the kids during that time because you were locked up inside your house. I don't know. I'm not too sure. Where you all based out of? SCH Academy.
So we're based in Philadelphia. We're the
Okay,
largest and
Philadelphia.
oldest independent school in Philly.
So how long was the lockdown that you guys had? Because I know I'm in Florida. Our lockdown didn't. Let's just say it didn't last that long. as,
Sure.
as most know. I wish it'll probably a little bit longer, probably to
Well,
save some people, but
well, I
was
think
it months for you?
so. We went home for 2 weeks, like everyone else, and then that
Mm-hmm.
turned into the entire spring. So we pivoted probably after being home for the 2 weeks to or online learning. So we were equipped to do that because we are one to one, and our teachers
Mm-hmm.
have been using technology. It's part of our ethos here, really. So we
Awesome.
were equipped to do it. But as you said, and you mentioned your state, we are capitated by what our city would allow. So
Mm-hmm.
Philadelphia did not allow us to return in person in the spring of 2020. So we were fully remote, but we spent this entire summer doing professional development for our faculty, moving more things into the cloud, and we were committed to being open in the fall and really worked hard to create a safe environment. We're very blessed that we have this 62-acre beautiful campus, lots of outdoor space, so we can spread kids out and
That's
educate in a
nice.
safe way. And we were able to do that. We opened about October 1st that year, and we stayed open the whole time. I mean, there was a couple times we had to close if there was a
It's almost a
certain
year.
segment. Yeah, yeah,
Oh wow, that's crazy. And some businesses they and I imagine the other organizations that weren't as prepared as you all. You weren't all some schools they weren't one to one. Where now
yes,
they've got to start getting tablets and computers out to the kids in a safe manner through all of the
yeah.
restrictions with social distancing. So definitely, I'm glad you were all able to figure that out there. And 62 acres, that's got to be nice.
Yeah, it's a large canvas, a huge footprint to manage. I mean, even on the security front, we have to make sure, like at nighttime, because we are in the middle of city streets, so you have to cross some streets to go to different buildings on our campus. So there might be
Ah,
people out walking a dog who, if we're not secured properly, could connect to our Wi-Fi, for example. So all those things have to
yeah.
factor into the design of our network and how we're managing it.
Yep. And I can't tell you, it's funny you say that. Someone walking their dog and connect to your Wi-Fi. I can't tell you how many times I've sat parked in my car, use a long range directional antenna or a long range
Hmm.
Wi-Fi adapter, connect into the guest network. The guest network just happens to have connection to the production network with the domain controllers, or be able to also, as well
Mm,
as just production Wi-Fi using WPA, pre-shared key, capture the key, crack it offline, break into the production network. Now you can wreak havoc from
yeah,
there. So
not
yeah,
good.
definitely can understand that. Definitely has to come into play when you're factoring in your network design because radio signals. This is something that a lot of people really don't talk about, but they leave you just as vulnerable as being able to plug in a hardwire.
Yeah, I think, and in education, one of the concerns I would have for our field in
Mhm.
general is it's so important in any industry, but also ours to bake security into the planning phase
Mhm.
always. It's so difficult, as you know, to bolt security onto a solution after you've launched it. And, education is a field where there's lots of talks about creative freedom and the ability
Mhm.
to be an admin and do whatever you want. And there's significant risks and costs that come with that. So we are
Yeah.
always balancing the tightrope of providing a secure environment that is protected, but at the same time, giving people the tools they need to, build airplanes or
Mhm.
build robots or create businesses in our entrepreneurship program or do something with AI that's really creative in the English department. Like whatever it is, we have to figure out a way to allow our students and teachers to be creators of content, not just consumers, but do it
Mhm.
in a way where they're protected and our environment is protected. Because as you just said, you can find a vulnerable weak link and it's going to give you access to so much more.
Yeah. And it's, I just want to kind of the way that you're approaching balancing those challenges, I always ask most guests, how do they balance innovation with security? But you just laid it out there. It's like you've got students, you've got students that are trying to be at the leading forefront of academic research and being able to play with just these different technologies and concepts for them to just grow. And sometimes they might need local admin permissions on their compute
Mm-hmm.
on their machines to be able to do some of this stuff. But it's like you have to step back and take a look and how can we do this securely from the get-go versus doing it retroactively, because it's always much harder and takes much longer to try to bolt the
Yes.
security on after the fact. It's what the industry's calling it, shifting left, whether that be working together with developers to secure things during the development process, or just making sure before you roll out anything that you're doing your due diligence on how to roll that out in a secure manner. But
Yeah.
definitely can go ahead.
Yeah, no, just thinking about that too. I mean, we just literally, I had a team meeting this morning with, kind of my core team talking about a new remote assistant tool that we have. And we have to make sure there's no ability for that for even people in IT to remotely control one of our users' machines without them explicitly allowing that. And that
Mm-hmm.
becomes important when you have people who are off site. And we have
Yep.
kids here that are under the age of 18. So, in
Mm-hmm.
no possible situation should it be that anyone could go in and remotely control that computer without the end user saying, I'm allowing you to access it because, they're having like an after hour support issue or
Mm-hmm.
something, or we're helping someone who's in a hybrid meeting or at a conference or whatever the possible iteration of that could be. But security is also for people in IT, which is another thing I often see. There's not a proper escalation of permissions within a department, within accounts, and you have someone whose email address is like the admin login for things. Like it feels like 2006 if I see things like that.
Yep.
Or you have everyone on the team, regardless of their role, whether it's a database administrator or an infrastructure manager or one of our technology support specialists, like they all should not have the same level of access in various systems. There has to be a rising hierarchy and ultimately using accounts that are separate from your own at the highest levels.
Mm-hmm.
So important. I mean, we read about breaches every day and we don't ever want to be the ones in the news about that.
Yep. That's your word. That's the worst fear. And account tiering is what you were explaining is one of the main things. Like your email account that you use for daily email. If you have admin privileges to certain mission critical machines, you shouldn't be using that same account for email. You
Mm-hmm.
need to separate off your account for your service, your administrative duties versus your daily driver with your email that's going to be more at risk to potentially be compromised if your other controls fail. But definitely can understand that one.
Yeah,
So
it's
I was going to ask, how do you go about building, a security conscious team and culture there over at the
oh,
academy?
okay. I'm sorry, Cedric. You froze on me there for a second. You said, "How do you go about?" And then I missed the rest of that sentence.
I was saying, how do you go about building a security conscious team and culture over at the academy?
Yeah. Thank you for that question. So we work very hard. We have something called Project ISA that's always active. It never goes away. It stands for Integrated Security Approach. So any new projects that we do, there's always a piece of it that has to check the boxes for ISA. And they're always,
Mhm.
whoever owns that project, they're also not in charge of the ISA piece. It has to be a different member of the team, and
Mhm.
ultimately having my sign off and going through that to ensure that if we're looking at a new enrollment management system, that we're looking at, okay, where is this hosted? What
Mhm.
kind of authentication is it going to use? How is it tying into our other systems? How is it tying into our registrar systems? What's the level of encryption that's used? Whatever the appropriate questions are to ask at that moment, we're asking them. And then we have partners on the outside too, because I think that's another thing in life that tends to hold us back sometimes is our own ego, that we
Mhm.
assume we know, we figured it out. And I've never done a project where I left and felt like, oh, I was the smartest person in that project. Like, it's really important to have people who you could say, please look at this for me. What are we missing?
Your
Here,
thoughts,
yeah, what are your thoughts? And having that collaboration, particularly from people outside your organization who are expert in the field, in this case of security, involved, is critical. And at schools, we tend to be amazing generalists. So we're
Mhm.
managing network security, we're managing databases, we're managing, thousands of endpoints, projectors, interactive TVs, door access control systems, phone systems, like whatever the tech is, we're managing it. And our expertise can go pretty deep, but we can't be as expert as someone who does those things every day and only those things. So
Mhm.
we find it very important to have a very rich set of partners.
Yeah, I think always having a diverse team with different skill sets. Because I said this with Timothy, the Timothy offers, and another guest who was on the show. We were talking about something similar, that you don't want to hire a team of people that have all the same expertise, because you're going to get groupthink at that
Yes.
point, most likely, right? You want to get those diverse perspectives from different backgrounds and be able to tap into the different perspectives of the way that, hey, my identity and access management engineer sees this one way, and my network architecture guy sees this another way, and you get those
Hmm.
different facets of input depending on what topics that you're working on. And that's
Yeah,
awesome that you
that's
guys have a system in place. So anytime something is coming on board, you're actually going through basically a checklist of things to make sure, is this a product mature enough to be in our environment, and what gaps are there in this, and is this something that's going to be acceptable for us? So
yeah.
that.
You make so many great points there, and even too, I think another challenge we have is if you get quality people, and we strive to always have, we have a reputation for having a really always having amazing teams. It's sometimes people want to learn more than what their jobs are. They might want
Mhm.
to learn some networking if they're not on the networking side, or they might want to learn security. And it's really important for us, for people who are in a position that are leading or managing others, that we help give them a good path, even if that means ultimately they're going to move on at some point. But bringing people up in the field in a way that they can continue to grow and think along the lines of the way some of the things you and I are discussing are important, because ultimately it's going to help our country, our private industry, our education sector,
Mhm.
whichever area you're going into, to be more secure and be conscious of the end user and have empathy for them, because that's important. Like, people are doing their
Yeah,
jobs, people are teaching and learning, like, security is not top of mind for them. So if we
exactly.
could do it in a way where it's built in and it doesn't overly hinder them, man, that's really important.
Yeah, because what I through my tenure, when you tend to throw the kitchen sink at the end user in terms of just policies, different things that they need to make sure they keep out of, you get mass mutiny.
Hmm.
There's a saying, a good colleague of mine likes to say, is like, you got to boil the frog slow, so they don't realize that they're cooking, right? And it's not per se like that. It's because there's so many different things that you have to be vigilant for, to to make sure you don't let the attackers in, because again, they only got to be right once.
Yeah.
We've got to be right 10 times out of 10. So
Yes.
all it takes is one. So just taking the time to gamify and do it in a way that resonates with the end user, and it doesn't feel like too much of a hassle is what's gonna get them to pick it up, and just be as simple as when they leave their house, they're locking their doors, right? It's the same way. We want it to become second nature, just like that.
Yeah, I think of the boiling the frog metaphor kind of like, okay, a few years ago, we're introducing complex passwords.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next step is two-factor authentication. And then the third
Yep.
year, they have a passcode vault. And then the fourth year, we're using, we're separating out their traffic from guest network traffic or whatever the path is. Next
Exactly.
thing you know, you're 10, 5 years later, 10 years later, and you're boiled, so to speak, and you don't even realize it because you're doing things in sort of a manageable way rather than
Yep.
saying, here's all the corporate IT policy, and you're like, oh man, the guys in IT, they don't understand. If it
Yep.
wasn't for me, there wouldn't be any business here, and they're just stopping
Yeah.
me from doing business. But instead, we have a partnership because I
Yep.
certainly couldn't do their job. I mean, I look at our faculty and the care and love that they give the students and the patience
Mhm.
that they have and the ability to teach kids with 10 different types of learning styles. Like that to me is amazing. So
Yep.
our team always tries to remember that hey, we might be expert in this field, but our counterparts at our school are experts in their field, and we
Mhm.
need each other to be successful.
That's right. It has to work. It's a team thing. It's the if everyone's not moving together like a well-oiled machine, this whole thing could break down. So everybody needs each other. Everybody plays their part. So I can definitely understand that. And that anybody that I mentor that's getting in the field, I try to teach them the same things. Like no matter what, you're gonna work with users where you might feel like may not be as competent as you when it comes to certain things, but listen, there are things that it's going to be on the same boat where you might not be as
Hmm.
competent in, but you both are there to help each other. You're both a team because without each other, the business doesn't succeed. So
Yeah.
definitely can understand that. To kind of switch gears here, want to get into some nuggets that our listeners can take away from this as terms as far as advice for their career. So for example, let's say someone who is just starting out their journey into IT,
Hmm.
what's one piece of advice that you would give to them?
Yes. So one piece of advice I would give is volunteer for everything. Show up early, stay late. I'm not talking
Mhm.
about having a lifestyle that is overwhelming, but there's also
Mhm.
the reality that early in your career, you've got to put the work in.
You
And
do.
sometimes, yeah,
There's no way around
right.
it.
There are no shortcuts. So when there's a new project, even if it sounds like something that maybe isn't appealing to you, but there's an IT piece, volunteer for that because you're going to learn
Mhm.
from that person who is different from you, has a different perspective, they do something differently. And then maybe 10 years down the road, you'll be able to connect with someone else who's in development or marketing and communications, and you'll be able to draw on those relationships you had in the past and they'll help you. So my
Mhm.
number one piece of advice would be volunteer for as many things as you can, and have a good work ethic to want to go above and beyond just what you're being asked to do. Always try and do more, whether it's for the company or to better yourself, because you
Mhm.
want to be on a trajectory where you're constantly improving, and the people who run your organizations are going to see that, and they're going to value that, and they're going to value you, and that will pay off in the long run.
Yep. And that's what I try to tell anybody who asks me, "Hey, I want to get into cybersecurity. I want to get the six-figure paycheck." I say, "Hey, look, if you're
Mm-hmm.
not willing to continuously learn and continuously
Yes.
do research and continuously listen like to blogs and read blogs, research papers, then this might not be the field for you, because no matter what domain you pick in this industry,
Mm-hmm.
right? Whether it be network security, ethical hacking, incident response, you got to continuously educate yourself, because what the things that you've learned yesterday might not be relevant today. It might not be best
Yep.
practice today. So, you got to always continuously learn. And if you're not willing to, you're going to get burnt out. So you got to pick your poison. Choose something that you're interested in. If you're willing to continuously learn, then this is a field that will serve you forever. And like how you said it, when you exhibit this to your employers, they will see that value, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that comes from, one, you actually, like you said, volunteering and not being, what I like to say, voluntold, right? Because there's
Yes.
always
Right.
there's always that opportunity. You're in the room, and they're looking for someone who has the bandwidth to stick up for something, to lead something, and then there's that kind of that awkward silence sometimes, and then whoever's actually in charge really has to, at that point, has to delegate it to somebody, and so it's much better when the relationship is starting off when you're up and you're volunteering for it,
Yeah.
rather than getting it reluctantly.
Yeah, I love that. That's such a great point. I love voluntold. I'll be using that more often too.
Yeah, I actually I learned that phrase when I was voluntold for the first time, and then after that, I was like, yeah, I'd rather volunteer every other time after that, because otherwise you're at the mercy of like basically picking short straws.
Yeah, the idea that you are going to walk into a job making big bank right away with no experience is just it's a little bit of
You
a
gotta have
fallacy.
experience. You gotta
Yeah,
have
you got
experience. You gotta have something underneath your belt. And it's not even just about like getting a certifications, but actually being able to get in an interview and articulate the exact methodologies and concepts that you would have to apply on the job. And that's the key. That's one of the key things that I see with some candidates that I do interview, that sometimes they come fresh out of school, or they may have a certification or two, but when you ask them a real world scenario, they kind of have trouble applying that into the context that you give them. And they're right there on the cusp of it, but just that comes with experience, the taking the time,
yeah.
and being in the weeds and the trenches to be able to, those light bulb moments where things go off for you. But
Yeah,
definitely.
and it's the thing too, where as you get more mature in your career, hopefully you get some wisdom too. And I think the
Mhm.
scary thing for me about security is a lot of times wisdom comes through failure, or through, we talk about like failing forward, or if you're not failing, you're not trying hard enough. But in security, that's a very fine line, because there
Yeah,
is
because
no buffer for us, right? We can't fail.
yeah,
So yeah.
one failure could mean everybody lost their job and we're bankrupt and we're out of business.
Oof.
So
Yes.
yeah, it can get pretty rough out here, and I've actually witnessed it firsthand. But
Mm,
that was egregious negligence in that case. I won't mention any names, but yeah, definitely can understand that, and that's what whenever you're hiring, you gotta make sure you try your best to hire the right person, because nowadays there's, and I tell this to people too that are looking for opportunities, is that everybody's resume is perfect now.
hmm.
Everybody's resume is perfect. You put out a job description out there you get resumes with perfectly tailored bullet points to your job description. And it isn't until you spend the time and invest in talking to that end candidate where you start to realize there are some cracks,
Yeah.
and when you start chipping away at it, then you realize, like, then it becomes kind of the same story, at least just in my experience. And when you do find somebody who exhibits that passion, you show that they're willing to continuously learn. They may not know every last thing, they may not check every
Hmm.
last box, but they check the box for they're willing to be a go-getter. That they've showcased that they may not know something, they're humble enough to admit that, and they're humble enough to say, hey, I'm going to go do some research, get back to you. Those things right
Love it.
there, I value more than you having all the certifications in the world, because those are things you cannot teach.
Yeah. Yeah. So true. Great point.
So I got a fun question I like to ask people. So
Uh-oh.
if you could go back and give yourself one piece of advice at the beginning of your career, what would it be?
Buy rental properties.
It's funny. Me too. I wish I would have had some money in 2008 to set some and
It,
collect some of those. But
it's our oldest son is 21, and I've been saying to him for the last year or two that, hey, why don't you think about diversifying a little bit? Think about buying a rental property or something. I said, well, you want to be my age, and you want to be in a very different position where maybe you're on a career because it's just fun and the money that doesn't have to matter to you. Wouldn't that be nice?
yeah,
Um, and
definitely.
it's ironic. Last night I was talking to him. He was just involved in his first data breach. He got a letter. He was really freaked out. And I said, "Look, okay, let's calm down here. Let's look at what was the personal identifying information that was breached. It was your name. It was your address. There's no bank account, credit cards, anything like that. Like you're going to be okay. They're going to give you 2 years of credit monitoring. Let's set
Yeah,
that up. Pay attention to your bank account. Pay attention to all
future
your
credit.
finances. Yes, future credit, right?
No, yep, definitely. When I got my first data breach letter more than what 13, 14 years ago, now it's like they're coming in emails left and right to me.
Yes.
They're
Yeah.
going to this spam. But I think at this point everybody's had some part of their data breached in
Yeah.
some way, shape, or
I
form.
think
Like,
perhaps to be a little bit more on point though with your podcast and our conversation, I say the rental property thing. I don't not mean that, but in the field, other than showing up early and volunteering, I think another piece of advice I would give is just kind of try and grow your own network. Even if you're an
mhm,
introvert, and sometimes people in our field love to be, they get their energy from working on the computer with the door closed, and
lights
but it's
off, music playing.
yes, yeah,
Yeah,
build your relationships, build your network, because those people can really help rise you as a human being as well as in your career. So you know
agree.
try and build some relationships.
A lot of the opportunities that I've been fortunate to take advantage of have all come and stemmed from my network. People I know, people that I've built relationships with, that I've worked together with to help report vulnerabilities on their platforms, and then eventually they want to end up going and do some further analysis. I'll do some further work together on certain things that they want to get my take on, and that all stemmed from, hey, being on LinkedIn, writing
Hmm.
messages, being involved in certain communities, responding to comments, providing value, giving back where you can, because that's really what matters. You try to pay it forward to the networking thing, and it is really underrated in the field. And I try to tell anybody who's also looking to build and advance their career, so you gotta network. You gotta have those conversations. Those micro connection moments where it might be those, some people call it those water cooler conversations, like
Yes.
when you're in,
Hmm.
maybe in the office, or and you see someone, you're asking them how their day was going, any exciting plans for the weekend, anything they do fun over the weekend, whatever the case may be. It's through those moments that you make these micro connections that could stem off into other collaboration for other ideas,
Mm.
and just for you also to build your rapport with the people that could influence your career as well. So
Yeah.
it's very, very important. But I appreciate you coming on the show today, Pete. You've shared some great, incredible insights and experiences with us today. For our listeners, if they wanted to connect with you online, where could they find you?
Definitely on LinkedIn. These days, that's pretty much. I won't call it social media, but that's where my online presence is. I'm not much of a little bit on personal social media, but not. LinkedIn is really where I spend my time learning and growing.
Okay. All right. Awesome. I do too. I love LinkedIn Learning. And that's why anytime I read any white papers, anything, I'm going and looking up that person and trying to connect with them and give them some kudos or talk about whatever
Smart.
thoughts or anything like that. And that's been one of my cheat codes that have been building my network over the last decade. It's just, every time
Awesome.
you're listening to a podcast, reading a blog, don't just listen to it. Go connect with that person. Go see what else they've got going on. And you don't know the types of networks that you can get into just by doing that, separate yourself.
Great tip.
But
Yeah. This great meeting you, Cedric. I really appreciate your time and reaching out and having a conversation with me. Thank you.
Likewise, likewise. I know we were good. We were set to meet. I think it was in December of a little bit of last year. I'm glad we were able to get this on the books, and I definitely would love to have you on the show again. For our listeners, if this is your first time, please, 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 to help this show and for more conversations with IT security leaders like Pete, subscribe to our podcast, whether that be on YouTube or Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you're hearing this right now. Until next time, stay safe, stay secure.